I find so much fault in programs like the one I went to, in that they're literally being predators on these vulnerable parents. And another weird thing about it is that they get to choose who they accept. I've never heard of like a mental hospital who gets to pick and choose who gets to come. Whoever's sent there is sent there. And I think that I was just this perfect case that they thought they could work so well. And they did, unfortunately. That's like the theme of all of this. Like, you get there and you know that it's wrong, and they take everything from you, and then you just want your life back so bad that you're so happy that they give it back to you at the end.
Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, really appreciate it. This week, I'm speaking with Aliya Kasabian. I'm actually going to be speaking with her the next 2 weeks. This is part one of a really powerful conversation. We're going to talk to her about something that I've touched the surface of before, and that is the troubled teen industry. I spoke with somebody that was in the troubled teen industry, Amanda Householder, that her parents ran the home that she was in. It was part of the IBLP, Institute of Basic Life Principles. So it was a little bit of a different world than Aliya. Aliya was sent to the Boise Girls Academy between 15 and 16 years old. She actually had some issues at home with her parents, not unlike a lot of teenagers, probably just like yourself. Wasn't getting along with her parents, and her parents decided to send her first to a home that was probably not all that bad. She was there for a short time. She was, excelling at the program, and everything was going well. She was supposed to go home the next day, and then in the middle of the night, two people picked her up and took her on a 13-hour drive from California to Boise, Idaho, where the nightmare began. And she started learning more about the Boise Girls Academy, and that was her life for almost a year. We're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk about just the issues with these troubled teen homes, the issues with understaffing, the issues with ill-prepared staffing, the issues with creating rules that are just really barbaric in nature. We're going to touch in this particular part of the podcast a lot about the rules, a lot about what happens when you don't obey the rules, a lot about how the rules had some strong psychological effects on those who were in the home. And of course, this was a group of people who were there because they were having some kind of issue at home, and now they are being forced to not show emotion, not ask questions, not show any kind of care for others, not talk about home. Of course, this is trying to help girls better themselves and better whatever was happening at home, but then you're not able to talk about it. This is a home where people were forced to be silent for days on end. It's a home where people were fed expired food. It's really a scary thing. Aliya was so generous with her time to explain a lot of this to us. This week, we're going to cover most of the story of her being at the Boise Girls Academy, with the rules, the punishments, some of the stories while she was there. We're going to end on what her parents were told. They thought they were sending her there as a favor to her. That's what they told her. It was such a disconnect where they thought they were helping her, but it was a nightmare situation. So we're going to end this particular part of the podcast on why her parents did that and what they were being told. And then next week we'll pick it up on a little bit of that, and then we will talk a lot about what happened afterwards. What was the aftermath of being sent somewhere like this. It has a profound effect on people, and it's one that several years later she is still dealing with. She is now 20 years old. We're going to talk just a little bit about kind of the PTSD that she has from this, much like other people that I've talked to from cults, where they for the rest of their life they in the back of their mind think, am I doing the right thing? With the people at this facility, would the people in my cult be upset with me about this? Really, really powerful conversation. Um, yeah, I think you're going to really enjoy this one. Of course, I've got to say, if this is your first time listening, please go right now, leave that 5-star review on Apple and on Spotify, leave a written review on Apple, really helps. Go follow on Instagram. That's always amazing. We'll talk again at the end of this podcast. Here is Aliya Kasabian. I'm here with Aliya Kasabian. Ms. Kasabian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hardest question of the evening. That's what I normally say, but we've got some interesting things to cover. But hardest question, just introduce yourself.
Introduce myself?
Mhm.
Okay. My name is Aliya Kasabian. I'm 20 now, 20 years old.
Oh,
I live in California and I am a tattoo artist.
I like it, and I want to we're obviously going to talk a lot about your time in kind of the troubled teen industry. I didn't mention it before we started, but have interviewed one other person from this world that it also was built into like the IFB, Independent Fundamentalist Baptist movement. So there was a lot to talk
Mm.
about there. And the troubled teen. So I know that we're going to kind of focus on that with you, but I want to before we get to you as a troubled teen. Let's talk to you as a young adolescent, Aliya. Talk about growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up, I've never moved houses before. We live in right near Sacramento in California. Grew up in a really nice neighborhood. Again, I've never moved. My mom and my dad still together, and then I have an older brother and an older sister. Um, Growing up was honestly like pretty perfect, especially being older now, looking back when you have like a good sense of how the world actually is. When you have a good childhood, it's hard to like understand that it's rare. Um, so yeah, my family was always really loving. My parents are Christian and um I have a lot of respect for them because they definitely honor just the fact that love comes first. That's like big theme in my life. Um I did have when I was younger, again with like growing up and having an outside perspective, it's hard to know when you do things as a kid, like how do you know they're not normal, you know? Because it's all you know, you're just a kid. So I, starting at the age of, I don't know, like 3, 4, I would have visual hallucination at night. I don't have schizophrenia. It was like a really odd um phase, but I could see and touch things. I had really bad undiagnosed anxiety and OCD. I I remember living my life in these segments of there would be a few months where I was so afraid of, I just had this hyper fixation on being kidnapped or being brutally murdered. Like for some reason, since I was born, I've just felt like that's how I'm gonna go out. Like it just feels like a fact in my head. So I would stress about that. I would, I had bunk beds with my brother growing up, and I would ask him like questions when we were going to bed so that I wouldn't be the first or the last one to fall asleep. Like, what's your favorite color? Like,
Mm,
try to keep him up. And then as soon as I flipped out of that, like, um, stress about my safety, it would turn into this new phase for a few months of, am I doing something wrong? Am I bad? Am I lying? And along with that too, with the OCD, my brother has severe allergies. So I would start washing my hands over and over and over, and I got really bad eczema from it. So I just started developing just this worry and angst. And I don't blame like the way Christianity was taught to me, but I think with my OCD, it made me overly guilty from a really young age. And I would convince myself that I did things that I didn't do. And I was always having to make up like alibis for myself in my head, if that makes sense.
mm.
Um, yeah, so that was like when I was younger. Going into elementary school, my sister was struggling a bit. This was end of elementary school is kind of when the world started like opening up to me. My dad got laid off. I don't know if you know Intel, big
Uh,
computer company. He was with them and then he was with Micron. They had like a huge layoff in the early 2000s, 2010-ish area. Um, so I remember our parents sitting us down and just being like, Santa's not gonna have a lot of money for stuff this Christmas. And from then on, it was just like an understanding that we were not, I mean, of course, we're well off. I have a house, like for crying out loud, but um, things got stingier. Um, and then my sister went through some struggles that definitely started getting different members of my family into therapy. I first really started saying and understanding that I had depression or anxiety in like late middle school, early high school. I remember I had this friend. She was my friend since like second grade. And I have you ever met those people that like, and it's no fault to them. It's just that for some reason there's just no struggle in their life. Like,
oh yeah, no,
and
for sure.
not to diminish anything that she had been through or those people had been through, but it's like the people who are born, they go to school, their parents pay for college, they meet someone, get married, have great, like it's just like their life goes without any large disruptions. And who knows what'll happen in the future. But as my life started to get disrupted, we related less and less. So I remember one day she was just kind of asking me why I was down, why I was different. And I said to her, I have depression. And it wasn't like like I have depression. I hate myself. And like, it was just like a very, like, I have depression. The next week I got a text from both her and my friend, but more her friend, just these long paragraphs of like, you need to get help for yourself. You're affecting her badly. You this and this and this and this. And that really caught me off guard because I think it would catch anybody in the right mind off guard. So yeah, I started to get a little bit more defensive.
What age was
And
this? What age was this?
this was ninth grade. So
Ninth
I
grade.
was probably 14.
Mhm,
That's around the same time I started going to my own therapist. Wasn't quite doing the psychiatric stuff yet.
mhm.
Um, and then, I was still going to church, youth group, and such in early high school. Sophomore year is really when everything kind of unfolded, when it all really began, the end of the beginning of the end. Um,
Yeah, and I want to. I guess I want to ask you about that. So we've got you to kind of that stage when things did begin to happen. And I guess I want to ask you, looking back now, because I mean, no one, I'm sure we can agree, no one deserves what happened to you. I mean, there's
yes,
people that have, there's people that have, mental health issues that their parents probably need to help them find, somebody that can help them with it. There's people that have, actual behavioral issues that maybe they do need,
absolutely.
some kind of intervention, but that's a far and away from what happened to you. So now that we kind of have figured that out, what my question to you is, looking back, do you think, what you were doing at that time, do you think that it was, you know, rebellious? Do you think it was something that it was a kind of a cry for help and that you needed something? Or do you think it really was just you kind of finding yourself and people overreacting?
I would definitely say a mix of both. I honestly like I really don't relate to my 15-year-old self at all. I don't quite remember what made her so angry and rebellious because it eventually did get to a point where it was um rebellion. But the interesting thing is even in that phase of life, I still hated the feeling of getting in trouble or getting caught. I never was sensitized to being in the wrong for the right reason, if that makes sense. I've always, I mean, growing up, I was a like straight A kid, teacher's pet, all of that. And I was the nice girl. That was like my label. So, I mean, I think obviously smoking weed was the first thing that really struck alarm bells in my family's head. I don't think what I did when I was younger was deserving, obviously, of that at all. But I mean, especially looking back now in my 20s, I, I was more tame than most kids at my high school. Like, I was smoking weed. I wasn't doing coke and Molly and all that jazz, you know? I dabbled in psychedelics once before I left. Um, but yeah, I did end up getting CHS, which I also have now, which is just basically an allergy to marijuana. But when I first started smoking, it was not out of rebellion. It wasn't like I want to do something naughty. I want to be doing drugs. It was I saw people I knew doing it and trying it and expressing that they liked it. And when I tried it, it was the first time when that feeling of, am I doing something wrong? I think I'm doing something wrong. All that anxiety that I didn't know I had and OCD that I didn't know I had melting away and just being able to see what was in front of me, understand that, and have some joy. My serotonin balance was definitely off. So, yeah, I mean, I I smoked pot. I ran away from my house once, but I texted my whole family, told them I was safe and I just needed like a second to myself, which now looking back is concerning. Um, I I mean, that was pretty much it. I stole some money because I didn't have money for weed, but I mean, in no way do I justify that as being something that shouldn't be punished or reprimanded, though I don't think it is intense enough to have an abandonment of a child. I think that when you have a kid, it's your job to guide them. And I personally, when I have kids, I wouldn't, it would take a far point for me to say, you're not my responsibility for a little bit. Somebody else needs to deal with you. Um, Examples of that, in my opinion, would be like if my kids got into like gang violence and I didn't know how to handle that. If, I mean, God forbid, like if I had a son who was not appropriate with women, that would be enough for me to like fully disown, you know? But I think kids are going to be kids. Um, I can't think of a single generation that wasn't. I mean, in the 70s, everybody was doing LSD and coke and yeah, I think I was it depends on who you compare me to, you know? If you compare me to a straight A student who never had any mental health issues and went straight to college, yes, I was a very troubled teen. If you compare me to somebody, right? I mean, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a whole saying to that. It's compare me to the alternative, not the almighty. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of a what we need to look at. So now that we know kind of
Yes.
your mild rebellion, some people would just say as a a kid kind of finding yourself.
Hmm.
The thing that I guess I want to understand to begin with is you kind of you accepted that you needed some kind of help, whether you really did or not. You accepted it, and you kind of willingly went to that first
Hmm.
place. So, and that's interesting to me. How did that come about? Just because
Yeah.
we talked about how it doesn't sound like you did anything too wild that I think most teens would have been sent away for. So, do you feel like that? How did that happen? Were you kind of gaslighted into thinking you were worse than you
Mm.
were, or what's that look like?
I definitely, a big part of that, I think, was COVID starting. I left for that program probably like a few weeks after school got shut down and everything. So I was isolated in my house with my family, which we did not get along at the time at all. I couldn't see my friends, and also I just had really bad anxiety. So anxiety attacks every single day, depression every single day. And I was so tired and I understood even if my thought process wasn't like I need help, it was more I want relief, if that makes sense. So I had been talking to my therapist and she had mentioned some like inpatient programs, outpatient programs, et cetera, et cetera. And it was more the idea of me having some space from my parents for a while and getting to be on my own in a therapeutic environment where I could do my art and I could talk to other people like me and have some family therapy. And that idea sounded okay to me. My therapist definitely played a role in convincing me, and same with my mom. But I was okay with doing a trial for a month and seeing how it went. What's the worst that can happen if I'm going to be trapped inside all day, anyways, you know? So I remember sitting out back and just like filling out my form for that program. Yeah.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about that first program, how long you were there, a little bit about, the experience there, because from what I've heard you talk before, I feel like maybe this program was not a terrible one, not one that, we would probably be talking about if that's all that you had done. So talk a little bit about that first program.
Yeah, so the first program I went to was down in Antelope, California, like a couple hour drive from my house. So it wasn't anything crazy. I actually remember just like in the scope of my life being a long movie, just like a very iconic point of it was the last point I had my phone before I left. And I was driving over this bridge to get down to Antelope, and I posted on my story with like my friends, and it just said something like new phase of life starting. I hope this one's better. And that's just so like haunting to me. Like looking back, she had no idea what was coming. But yeah, we got to the program down in Antelope. It was literally just a house, like a kind of like mine. It was co-ed, so boys and girls, but the top capacity was 6 people or 8. It was
Mm.
very small. The staff ratio was like 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. Um, and it was very, I don't know, there's movies about like treatment programs where the kids kind of work together and they're rebellious and they have some fun, but like it's really sad. And like that program was like a TV show. Like it was good. We had a lot of freedom. I got to draw. I got to get my feelings out. Um, I was there with some crazy people, but my parents would come in once a week for family therapy. It never went well. Um, I basically kept saying that I didn't want to come back home. I didn't want to live there. I didn't feel good there. Another one of my problems with my parents, which has changed now, growing up, was I started to remember things about my childhood where I would wake up and have an anxiety attack to where I convinced myself I couldn't breathe. And I would beg to go to the hospital and I was never taken. And I felt kind of robbed in a sense, in like I felt like it could have been dealt with earlier before this all like exploded. Which I see no fault on my parents' part now. They did what they knew how to do at the time. But yeah, our family therapy never went well. I was angry at that point and I was separated from them and I was surrounded by kids who were also mad at their parents and people who I could easily manipulate and tell them my side of the story, and mine sounds way better now because they know nothing about me or my history or anything like that. Um yeah, but no phones there. Uh just away from the internet and the world for a little while. It felt really weird. I made a few friends. One of them I still just found contact with recently. Um, but yeah, everybody just kind of filtered in and out. We would have like art therapy and painting rock therapy and baking therapy and like chores. And honestly, like that I think is an appropriate version of a program. If I could like have an ideal, obviously everybody's different, but for me at the time, I feel like that could have been really beneficial if it was for like 3 months, but like that and like if you could earn your phone back by being good, like just I don't know, like space to breathe. I still felt like a person there,
Mm.
you know?
No, that makes sense, and that was kind of one, puzzle piece I wanted to understand that I didn't take away from the time I've heard you speak before, and that is, you know, what happened with you being there that made you go somewhere else because it whether it worked or not. I was just wondering, and it sounds like maybe was it, and I'm trying to understand it from your parents' perspective. Was it that because of those family sessions weren't going well? Because you were saying you didn't want to come home, do you think that's what drove them to look for another solution? Obviously, the solution was a terrible one, but is that what
Mm-hmm.
drove them to look for another one?
Honestly, I don't know the complete timeline. In my head, I think since now I know how like the initiation process starts with this other program, I believe that at least by halfway through, they had been communicating with the other program, planning this whole thing because it takes time to hire transporters and it takes time to get accepted and do an interview and process files and everything. But I think, and I'll get into this more, but I find so much fault in programs like the one I went to, in that they're literally being predators on these vulnerable parents. And another weird thing about it is that they get to choose who they accept. I've never heard of like a mental hospital who gets to pick and choose who gets to come. Whoever's sent there is sent there. And I think that I was just this perfect case that they thought they could work so well. And they did, unfortunately. But yeah, so I think I know it was planned before I left. It wasn't a day before thing. I'm sure the family therapy only justified their decision to them. And yeah, I mean, I had no idea that I was going somewhere else. I was told that I was going home and that I had graduated that program. And I was so excited to see my friends. Like, I don't know, I feel like anybody, adult or kid, who's separated from everybody they know for a whole month, it's like, oh my God, so excited to see everybody. Like, just normal human wants and needs.
Mm. No, for sure, and kind of just to go backwards on something you said a minute ago, where when you were a kid, you had that fear of being kidnapped, and I think that's a fear that a lot of people have, but that's one that's easy. Like, okay, that's scary for a kid, just like monsters under your bed, but the
Yep.
likelihood of that ever happening is very,
Low.
very slim. But that's what hurt my heart. That's exactly what happened to you. You had this such a specific fear, and then it played out. So
Yeah.
I just it was like, oh no. So I want to talk about. You talked about how it was almost time to go home. I think it was the day before you were supposed to go home.
Yeah.
um you mentioned how it takes some time to hire transporters, so I guess you met the people that were hired that last night. Talk a little bit about that evening.
Yeah, so and even touching back on what you said about me being a kid, like this fear that I had consumed me. It was
Mm.
not just in the back of my head, like, oh, I'm afraid I'm gonna get kidnapped. It was me every single night. I had this system, and this is where I don't understand how people didn't know I had OCD before. I would, first of all, practice hiding under my blankets and staying still in case somebody came in the room. Two, always know what my plan was going to be for the night if it happened. And three, make up these dream scenarios in my head every single night. I would think, okay, I'm in my school and a kidnapper just dropped this note and I'm picking it up and it says, we're going to kidnap kids who sleep with their toes outside their blankets tonight. So I would sleep with my toes inside my blanket. And for some reason, that brought me some comfort. And it's like, that's so weird looking back now, but like, that is how much it affected me. I was so afraid of that. um, I was really afraid of going through something hard and nobody ever knowing, I guess, which is almost what happened. So yeah, that night I was told I was going home the next day. Um, I sorry, I'm not meaning to. Yeah, but yeah, that night I was told, tomorrow you're going home. I had a conversation with my mom on the phone. Everything was set. She was excited to see me. So I went to bed with like, before I went to this program, I had no clue about the troubled teen industry. And I think a lot of people still don't. Um, I had no idea about transporters. I didn't know that was a thing. I went to bed in a room by myself. You usually had a roommate, and I thought that was just like last night privilege. Like I had no clue what was going on. So I slept really great that night, fell right asleep. And at like 12 in the morning, 1, my lights flicked on. I just like remember this moment. And there's 2 people standing in my doorway and some staff behind them. And they introduce themselves as Mike and Laura, and they tell me, we're taking you to your next program. They kind of explained to me more, you're going to Idaho, you're coming to Boise, we have custody of you. Your parents have signed away custody for 24 hours. They told me I looked like a runner and that Mike could tackle me if I ran. Mike is a built over 6 foot man, and I was a malnourished 5'8", 15-year-old girl, 16. I asked to go to the bathroom, and Mike said he would have to put his foot in the door for me to be able to go. I'm incredibly pee shy, so I couldn't use the bathroom. Not to mention, like, 1, why wouldn't you have the woman do that? And 2, there was only 1 window in there. I don't know if it opened, but if it did, all the windows and doors in that building had alarms on them. So just unnecessary uncomfortableness. And then I was escorted out to the car. There's a big black car. It's like middle of the night. I can't see anything. And they say that my parents are parked behind them, and there's my parents in their car. And I'm like so confused. I'm sobbing. You can't even process that stuff while it's happening. And they asked me if I want to say bye to my parents. So in my head, obviously, I'm like, no, like I'm angry. Like, what the fuck is going on right now? And yeah, then I was in this van for like 13 hours. And let it be known, Mike and Laura, you can actually find them on the internet if you just look up Mike and Laura Transportation Service. They actually work with Dr. Phil. There's videos of them on YouTube. If you look up Mike and Laura Dr. Phil, there's videos of them stealing girls out of their beds. They've been doing this and profiting off of this for years and years and years. And while I was in that car ride with them, they were sharing information about girls that they had met and had picked up, making fun of girls who weren't hygienic or had certain issues that they had to transport, making fun of my parents with me, which I thought was cool at the time, but so unprofessional. And they know nothing about where they're taking girls. They know nothing about where they're taking me. So when I was asking them questions, they're like, this is just our job. We've taken some girls here before. Good luck. So it was a really, really weird car ride. They like thanked me for making it easy, but I was like, what was I gonna do? Like I didn't know where I was headed. If I had, I probably would have tried to run away. But yeah, I had no clue what was coming.
Yeah, and I want so we've got you on a 13-hour drive
Mhm.
to the unknown. You weren't sure exactly where you were going. When did these? I know that your parents wrote you your letters. When
Yeah.
did you receive these? Was it during that drive? Was it once you were there? Talk about that.
I got the letters probably like 30 minutes into my drive. I was handed these letters. I think I actually still have them. I should try to find them in my closet. I have a box in my closet of every single letter I received in program, all my contracts, my journals, like everything, just because I don't want to lose it. Um, yeah, so I opened these letters, and basically it was just telling me how this experience was their gift to me. This was something they were doing for me out of love for me, which now, especially talking to them, I do truly believe that they had only the best intentions. And I know now that, like, if they would have known the reality of the situation I was in, they would have picked me up. But unfortunately, with Colts, that's not how it works. These companies are really, really good at working under the radar. But yeah, I got those letters and I ripped up the pictures that I had in there. I was so angry. Like beyond angry. And in my head, I thought once I get there, I'll be able to explain to them and get them on my side against my parents, and I'll be able to go super soon.
We're going to unpack a lot of this, but just kind of to introduce it, tell us a little bit about the facility that you did go to in Idaho.
Yeah, so we got there in the morning. Again, I have no context, no clue, no idea that these things even exist, let alone what this particular program was or how long it was. So we pull up to this building that's like just this huge facility. It almost looks like a nursing home. You can find pictures of it on Google if you just search up Boise Girls Academy, Nampa, Idaho. And there's like a big farm in the back lot of it, like pickleball court, volleyball net. And basically I walk in, my mom had packed my bags because I didn't know I was going and I didn't pack anything. I walk in, Matt greets me, Matthew Shaw. He's one of the directors of the program and the only male on campus. And then his wife comes and grabs me and she sits me down in like the layout. There's many entrances, but it's like a big square or circle middle room. And then like branching off on one side of the square is a hallway with bedrooms and then the classroom at the end. Branching off the other way is a hallway with bedrooms and then the kitchen at the end. The third side is branching off into a big worship room, and the fourth is branching off into the offices for the staff. So she took me into this big worship room, just like with couches and everything. And she fronted very well, acting like she really cared about what I had to say and like she really was believing me. So I got vulnerable with her. I told her what I was struggling with and how this was all just a big mistake and I didn't need to be here. She listened to me cry my little eyes out and then kind of just said nothing other than like nodding, smiling. This will be good for you, I promise. And then that's when they strip searched me. And I find out more the more digging I do and the more talking to old students that I do. Um, when I was strip searched, I had to take off my shirt and my pants, move around my bra, get changed in front of these two ladies that I didn't know when I was 16. There's 13-year-olds here as well. In my head, if I was running a facility where I needed to strip search minors, I would make sure that those strip searches were done like identically, like a very strict procedure on how it's done. Talking to other girls, that was not the case at all. Girls with like nipple piercings had to take their entire shirts off. And the worst one that really gets me is the only people who got their hair checked was the two African American girls who came in with afros, which is insane to me. As if I couldn't hide something in my hair, you know? I know girls who did hide things in their hair. So yeah, I got put in these khakis. I still don't wear khakis because of this. And a red t-shirt. And I still don't really wear red because of this. And it's explained to me that other girls in red t-shirts have done something wrong, or they're also new and I'm not allowed to talk to them, I'm not allowed to look at them, not allowed to interact with them, sit next to them. And that was all the information I got off the bat. I walked to the classroom. Somebody stops me with a camera and says, I need to take a picture of you. Girl comes up behind her, tells me to look sad so that they can see a difference in my picture. They kind of laughed about it like it was like a joke. I'm shell-shocked. And I walk into the classroom and sit next to this girl who's taller than me with curly hair. And she introduces herself. She says, hi, and I'm going to be your big sister. So they had a sister program there, which is like an upperclassman walks you through the rules when you get there. And like stays in a room with you, makes sure you get to breakfast on time, helps you not get write-ups. So yeah, there's a really large filtration process from students to interns to staff. A lot of girls who don't have good home situations to go back to or that are so praised for being so good get offered an internship. I was asked to stay for an internship. It means you're no longer a quote student, but you still have to follow the rules. You can still get write-ups, but you're this leveled up, you're this intern. It means nothing. So then you do an internship for a year or 2 years. And then once you get older, you can become a staff member and they live on campus. The longer you are there, the harder it is to undo it all. It's like a backwards process when you get back. Like when you get there, you realize how wrong everything is. And then you're slowly morphed into a person who praises the place. And when you get back, you're praising the place and you slowly unmorph, if you're lucky, into somebody who realizes how wrong it all was. And if you're there for 3 years, it's probably going to take about 3 years to undo everything. Like you relive it backwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's really tough just because, you've already called it a cult. I've talked to people in cults before. I've talked to people that, had been in a cult for 2 or 3 years in the 70s and, they're
Mhm.
60, 70 years old now and they're still suffering some of the effects. They're
Yep.
still sometimes in the back of their head, even though they think it's crazy, thinking, should I be doing this? I know the cult leader back then didn't like it. So I feel
Yep.
like that's going to be something that you're going to deal with, and we're going to talk about once you leave, obviously much later. But I guess I want to ask you. I assume based on what you're saying that some of this came in when you first started, and maybe from the staff. But you got there, you had to kind of start learning these rules. I think you even got a rule book. Talk about some of the rules here. Talk about some of the crazy rules that were happening because so far what we're talking about, I think people will be listening and be like, this sounds wild, but I don't hear anything crazy yet. So
Yeah.
give us some of those rules.
Yeah. So my first day, I'm handed a rule book that's like, I don't know, like 20 pages long. And from your first day, you're expected to know and follow all of these rules. There's like sections in the rule book, like dining room, classroom, church. Things as small as like when you're in church, you need to be sitting up, sitting straight, and not turning around and looking at anybody beside you. No disrespecting staff, no showing your discontent. That was a rule. You're not allowed to show discontent or sigh. That's in the rule book. You're not allowed to ask the question why. That's like, as soon as you get there, that's out of your vocabulary. Not allowed. Here's another kicker. Not allowed to talk about your old life or your old friends at all. So, and that really doesn't make sense somewhere where you're supposed to be healing from something or someone. So like you're not allowed to mention old friends' names, boyfriends' names, like anything of that sort. Really, there was a lot of rules like set in stone, but mostly these punishments, which I'll get to, was just based on staff bias. Um Also, I mean, just like sanitary rules and chore rules. We were making our beds with army corners every morning. Beds had to be perfect. You had to be ready by a certain time. Showers could only be 15 minutes. And I'm not talking like, oh, like 15 to 20 minutes. Like if you are not out the door by the 15-minute mark, it's a write up. For girls, I luckily at the time was bald, but for girls I've talked to with darker hair and curly hair and long hair, their hair is ruined now because they just weren't able to take care of it in that amount of time. I don't know. There was so many things that we had to memorize and live by. No touching people. You're not allowed to touch one another. And then there was rules that were added in later on. The big one that I talk about a lot is you're not allowed to say I love you. And that was integrated because there was like a lesbian problem in the facility. They also integrated that if you were talking to somebody in like a lovey way or they thought you had a girlfriend, your program gets extended immediately by months. But yeah, so they just sat us down and said, you're not allowed to say I love you anymore. It's not allowed. And I remember as an upperclassman, I would have to go through birthday cards for people and cross out anywhere where it said I love you. Like just exit out. No, oh, I forgot about this one. No one-on-one conversations. So even during free time, if you were sat, even with an upperclassman, one-on-one, there had to be at least 3 people there just to monitor everything that was going on, you know? And even if you had 3 or 4 people there, but you were all younger classmen, an upperclassman would walk up to you and listen to your conversation, or a staff would come up. What are you guys talking about? Just you're always being watched and you're always being noted about. At the end of every shift, every single staff member wrote an end of shift report and sent it to the director. Everything you did that day was documented and sent. So I actually set one of the records for the least amount of disciplines given. I think I got 2 or 3 my whole time there, and there was girls who would get like 5 or 6 a week. I still had this sense of guilt in me, and I don't want to get in trouble. My first ever write-up, it was like my first or second week there, and I was on red, so you're not allowed to talk to other reds. And this is just the perfect example of how petty these were. I was on my period, so I needed a tampon. I was in my room and there's a bathroom across the hall. I saw the door like half closing, like when it's about to close. So I walked over, didn't run because you're not allowed to run. I walked over and I knocked on the door and I was like, "Hey, sorry, like can I grab a tampon before you use the bathroom?" She opens up the door. It's another person in a red shirt. And I'm like, we both just immediately like stay silent. There's a staff next to us, one of my least favorite staff, and she just like looks at me and like nods her head, shakes her head, and it's like, I'm sorry, I couldn't have x-ray vision through the door. So I got to write up for that, and I had to write a Bible verse like 50 times on a piece of paper. But yeah, that kind of brings me to the disciplines for these rules.
Let's get to the discipline, but I want
Yeah.
to mention a couple things from there.
Mm-hmm.
One, and let's because we glossed over it. I've listened to your other interviews, so I understand it, but we glossed over where you said I was bald at the time. People are going to be like, "What? You were bald at the time?" So you did. I think it was at home. That was one of your kind of, I don't know, your finding yourself part is you shaved your head,
Yes.
correct?
Yes. So I and I feel like a lot of people, even at the time, I was so frustrated because so many people looked into it so much. And really, it was just, I don't know. I mean, I still have dyed hair. Like it's blue. I love it. And I was always really into like fashion and makeup and stuff. And trust me, it was not cute, but at the time I thought it was. Um, so me and 2 of my friends just decided to shave our heads, and we were just the bald girls at school. It's just like a decision.
So that's why you were bald at the time. So we've
Yeah.
got that. Two other things that you mentioned. Well, one, you talked about the rules and there being some rigidity to it. I guess
Mm-hmm.
my question there is because this is kind of a tactic of a lot of cults and some other troubled teen homes is kind of, and I don't know whether it's the case there or not. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is one thing that they
Yeah.
did correctly, but it was that there's ever changing rules to keep you from ever feeling content and understanding what you're supposed to be doing. The rules would continue to change. Cults do that to make you always not feel worthy. Other troubled teen homes have done that just to basically always keep people in trouble so they always
Mm.
feel like they're doing something wrong. Did they keep the rules consistent or were they always changing?
So the rules in the rule book were very consistent, but like I said, there was lots of added on rules. Or since I have it pulled up here right now so I can quote, since you're not allowed to, it says students are expected to comply immediately with staff requests. Um, so that was a big one. So even if you got a write up for something and it wasn't fair or it wasn't in the rules, it wasn't a rule at all. Sometimes girls would get write ups for something before they announced that it was a rule. Like they would like, I remember a story from after I left. Like some girls got a write up for talking in a group of 3, and they all got the write up. And then the next day they were like, you have to talk in a group of 4. Like just no way to be right if you're not liked and you're not one of the students who are being pushed up to the top. Um, so yeah, even if a staff gave you a write up that was completely unfair, I remember my second write up I got for talking during a movie. I did not talk one single time during that movie. And the write up made it sound so much worse than it was. It said talking during a movie, even though staff asked her to stop multiple times. And I didn't speak once. But then comes in the rule of you must comply with staff immediately. I'm not allowed to say, I, I didn't talk during the movie. There's another write up. So, I mean, you just kind of have to take it, eat it,
And
and
couldn't you ask why? Oh no, you couldn't do that either.
no, yeah. So it really is just a system of pure submission. Are you going to submit? And if you don't, you just keep getting in trouble. And then you're like, oh, what's the worst they can do to me, right? I'll just keep acting out. one is a program extension, but two, the thing that was really hung over our heads, since they had so much control over our parents as well, was we can send you to a different state to a program where it's legal to hold you until you're 21 years old. So, as much as I hate how submissive I was there, it really was a survival tactic for me because if I didn't, I could still be gone until next year. Like, I'm only 20. So that was really, really scary.
And the thing that really is awful too is, the people are going here for, whether it was truly an issue or not, they're going there for some kind of issue. And you said that you're not allowed to express any kind of, feelings of love. I feel that's just heartbreaking too, because I'm sure a lot of people there, that's exactly what they needed, is to
Yep.
feel cared for and loved. So it's
Hmm.
almost taking away maybe the very thing that they needed to progress.
Yes. And I do want to mention as well, I don't know if I covered this in my last podcast, that one of the biggest things that really, really bugs me is the training there is just you are a bad girl. What did you do to get yourself to this point? And staff would like make jokes about like, oh, at least I didn't get sent to a program when I was a kid, you know? And I'm 16 here, but there are 13-year-olds here. Fucking children. Like, are you kidding me? And I was there for smoking pot and for being disrespectful to my parents. Um, and that was the training that was given to me. You did things wrong. You are bad. We need to change that. But I'm not allowed to talk about my old life or problems. And there's no drug counseling. There's no therapy. Not a day of therapy did I receive. Um, and then this alone should be enough to like raise red flags in people's head. We're in a facility for healing. I'm struggling with pot and with disrespect. There's girls who were addicted to meth. There's girls who have eating disorders. There's girls who struggle with self-harm. And then there's girls who are adopted from other countries and now their American parents don't want them anymore. So they're dropping them in these programs. They've done nothing wrong. They've never smoked or had sex. And they're still being told, you are a bad girl. What did you do to get here? I had a friend who was born on the streets of China with two missing legs and abandoned, adopted by an American family, got prosthetics, decided she was acting out or doing something wrong, and she gets stuck in this program for years. And I think no matter what training you're giving, good or not, you cannot solve, you can't put every single problem in a house and expect to solve it all with the same training. It doesn't make sense at all. Yeah.
So what was you talked about how there was people struggling with drug addiction and, all these other different things. What was the training of the staff for all of these people? Were they trained healthcare professionals or were they simply just people who answered an ad on Indeed?
Yeah, so this is actually really interesting. And through my last podcast and just through me talking about it on Instagram, I have had some staff that were there while I was there reach out to me and give me some really sincere apologies and some insight into what the staff life looked like. One of my favorite staff there, actually, she had graduated an adult teen challenge and was interning at our facility. She left and she actually reached out to my other podcast, hoping to get an interview with them to reveal, the staff side of things. But yeah, the qualifications for staffing there were not high at all. Um, One of the staff members that I talked to who graduated an adult teen challenge told me they didn't have any background checks for workers there. So that's incredibly concerning. Not to mention, yeah, I mean, I they just have to be Christian and like, I don't know, the med people giving us our meds at night just had to go through like med training and give it to us. There was one night I have PMDD, so really, really bad period cramps. When I was in like my ninth or 10th month, like about to graduate, good kid, I requested ibuprofen for my cramps at night. And these are like, I can't move cramps. My least favorite staff, who gave me my first write up, she looks at the pills that I'm taking, and there's a few of them because it's like allergy pill, melatonin, like nothing crazy. I was off all my psychiatrics. And she looks at me and she says, you know, it doesn't look good for you to be taking all these pills. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a half an ibuprofen. And in a few hours, if you need more, you can come out. And I'm not allowed to argue with that. But a half an ibuprofen isn't going to do shit for period cramps. You need like 3 or 4 of those suckers. And I don't know. I had gotten all my meds approved by the nurse on campus, and staff are just allowed to say whatever. And then there was good staff there who I liked, who I would complain about the other staff to, and they say, "We know there's just nothing we can do about it." So to get to the point where you realize that the people in charge of you realize that it's kind of messed up, but they're not doing anything about it is so frustrating. Yeah, I have also talked with staff who left early and they told me they were getting paid $9 an hour. So incredibly underpaid. And then for our side of things, my parents, my tuition was over $85,000 for a year and a half. And then I also have a document here. I understand the cost per student is to be $84,000 a year, approximately $7,000 per month. I don't know anything that costs $7,000 per month. I can't think of anything. That's like a car payment or a mortgage. Like,
It's
and
a mortgage. If it's a car, you're driving a Ferrari or something.
they have 30 plus girls there at a time. I did the math. They're making over 1.5, $1.2 million a year. That's not including all the fundraisers that they do. And we're cleaning the place. I'm cooking dinner for 30 plus girls. I'm washing dishes. I'm scrubbing floors. I'm building you a new chicken coop in the back. I'm chopping down your trees. I'm planting your trees. I'm planting your flowers. I'm taking care of your farm animals. Where is that money going? It's and then the staff are paid $8 an hour. So it's like, what is happening? You know?
Yeah, and now I want to allow you to get to, the punishments for not following these rules and take kind of a quick detour in explaining that because of one punishment that has to deal with something you've already talked about, and that is tampons.
Hmm.
And the I guess there was something that happened with you and somebody playing a joke on you or something. Talk
Hmm.
about that, and then what happened from that, and then other really bizarre punishments.
Yeah, so I have the list of punishments here, but I'll start with the tampon thing. We had just provided tampons and pads, obviously. Um And I mean, if you're a girl, you just know that like once you move on to tampons, you never go back. Like I personally don't want to sit in like a diaper all day. It's just not for me. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just like so uncomfortable to me. So, and also I have PMDD, so I have incredibly different flow cycles, really heavy, really light, really crampy. It's just like a mess for me, especially in a stressful environment. That changes it a lot. So, yeah, this one day I just was having a really rough day and I went to the bathroom and I came back to drink my water and it was stuffed full of like unused tampons, just like little white cotton balls in there. And I got so angry. I was just pissed off. I was like, this isn't funny. It's fucking disgusting. And I'm angry. So, me being angry, I go tell a staff what happened. Like, I'm the victim in this situation. I got pulled a prank on and I didn't like it. They sit us down and they say, tampons are a privilege. You need to learn how to appreciate your privileges. So, they're banned from now to a point that we're not going to tell you. And I asked, like, if you guys aren't going to provide us tampons, can I ask my parents to send some? My mom was willing to send some. They said, nope. You need to learn to which what the fuck? I don't even know what that means. So then we entered like the tampon ban era, and I remember it was like black market, like it was like an Easter egg hunt. Like every once in a while, you would find a tampon that somebody hid right during the ban, and like you would savor it. And then it's like unhealthy because like I'm keeping it up there as long as I can because it's my last tampon that I have. Sorry, graphic, but like it was just this war of like who has a tampon. Like I needed a tampon, and then eventually we run out, and it's like we start asking, like we've been good, like when do we get tampons back? And then eventually they say every time you ask, it's gonna be longer. So it ended up being like a 3 or 4 month ban. And my sleep, I really struggled from that. I would lay my towel on my bed and sleep. And I would wake up like every hour just to go deal with it. Yeah, that was really, really horrible. And I don't, like that is just so dehumanizing. I remember asking or complaining to a staff about it, and she had said, "Oh, well, like I used to be homeless and I used to just like crumple up paper towels and shove it up there. Like you could try that." I'm like, I'm not homeless. I'm actually paying $7,000 a month to be here. The least you can do is give me a tampon. It was awful. And that's where the Stockholm syndrome comes in, because you know in your brain this is so wrong, but nobody's agreeing with you. And then you don't have it for so long that you're like, I would do anything to get this back. And then the people who took it from you give it back to you. And suddenly you don't even remember that they took it from you. You're just like, oh my God, thank you so much. You're saving me. Like you're giving it back to me. And that's like the theme of all of this. Like you get there and you know that it's wrong and they take everything from you. And then you just want your life back so bad that you're so happy that they give it back to you at the end. And then other punishments, I just have the little list here from the rule book. Scripture writing. A scripture writing discipline assigns a report on scripture that is relevant to the issue being addressed. It deals with interpretation, meaning, and purpose of the scripture, as well as a biblical application to the student. Writing rules, this was the most common one. Students may be assigned to write the rules that were broken. I knew people who had to write this whole like 20-page rule book over and over and over again. Character qualities. Students may be assigned to complete a particular character quality that needs to be addressed due to their choice of behavior. We had like a book of character qualities we had to follow and like be like. Here's where we get to the kickers. Silence. Students who continue to struggle with problems associated with their conversation are put on silence for a short period of time and will only be able to talk to staff. Okay, first of all, taking away not only freedom of speech, but speech itself is wild, especially for a child. Not to mention, in the end of that, it says they'll only be able to talk to staff. I know girls who staff were just tired of them and they said, you're on silence, you're not allowed to talk to anybody at all. And then you feel bad, right? That this person can't talk. So you want to talk to them in secret or give them somebody to talk to. But if you are caught talking to them, even if they talk to you, you're also in trouble and you're going to be on silent or get a write-up. So yeah, I mean, there was months where one or two girls would be on silent and you just have to pretend like they're not even there, like they're just invisible. The next one was relationship restriction. Basically, if they think, first of all, that there's like a couple issue, like if they think two girls are LGBTQ and they're spending too much time together, they'll enforce relationship restriction. Or if they just see two younger girls talking too much together, they enforce relationship restriction, which means that you're not allowed to talk to each other anymore. You're not allowed to look at each other. It's like one-on-one silence. Loss of privileges. I want to read this one. It says, privileges can be lost. Phone calls and passes can be taken away. Mail may be delayed. This is used only when other disciplines don't seem to work or when a student refuses to cooperate. That's wild because it did not happen only when other disciplines didn't work. One of the rules is that we weren't allowed to share at all. So, like, if your friend needed a hair tie, you're not allowed to give it to them. However, if you got caught, this was the most common cause of LOP, loss of privilege, was like if somebody used somebody else's makeup palette to get ready in the morning and another girl saw it and reported it, two upperclassmen go into their room, take all their makeup, take their extra pillows, their extra blankets, their extra shoe, like literally everything you have except for like uniform, toothbrush, toothpaste, basic quilt, and they don't give it back for a really long time, or they just don't give it back. Which also, weird thing, when you're 18, I talked about this on my other podcast, you're allowed to sign yourself out legally. For some reason, I don't know why it has never crossed my head until recently in the fact that this is literally illegal. The rule, for some reason, to them is if you're 18 and you sign yourself out, you can walk out, but only with the shirt on your back. You don't get any of your shit back. They don't let you have it. I have communicated with people since my podcast who chose to take their girls out of program, and they said that they wouldn't get their shit back. And that's with a parent pulling them out. So I know that's some people have been dealing with that, but it's just crazy to me. Like I don't understand how they think that's okay. And then just one big one right at the end is condoning. So this really ties the whole cult together, how it works, which is if you see somebody doing something wrong and you don't tell someone about it, you're in just as much trouble as them. So that really turns it's just like, how can I step on other people to get myself up to the top?
So, and I've talked about this to other people in these type of situations because that's common, unfortunately, in these situations where they kind of pitch you against each other.
Yeah.
What did that create for you guys? Did it create a world where you guys all just hated each other and wanted to literally step on each other to try to make yourself look better, or did it create an environment that you're like everyone knew this was super messed up and there was a little bit of camaraderie to try to make it the best of it?
It was a madhouse in there. I have never lived somewhere with that much drama. It is 30 girls aged 13 to 18 who are incredibly angry and pitted against each other for their own survival. So I remember there being moments of camaraderie, but you weren't allowed to relate with somebody and say, "Hey, I know this place sucks." It's not allowed. No feelings of discontent. So there were friend groups, like cliques. It was like high school. There would be like a clique from what I can remember. Like there's a clique of like the good girls, right? The girls who are about to graduate and they're doing everything right, so they want to surround themselves with each other so they're not caught, quote, condoning and getting in trouble by anything else. And the groups would move around. So like the girls at the top, who were the quote good girls, would also have like one or two like middle program girls who were doing well and like encouraging them to continue to do well. Then there was like the middle of program girls, and that was usually split into like two groups, like the people who weren't progressing at all and were just angry and they would condone each other and all have a bunch of write-ups. And then the girls who were trying to separate themselves from those girls and move up into the higher group. And then there was just like baseline people who just got here and you really don't want to be caught talking to them unless you're in the top group because then it looks like you're helping them. In terms of camaraderie, I I hate to be one of those people who's like, "Oh, I feel like I've lived a million lifetimes." But like truly being 20 years old, it is so hard to find people who see the world the way that I do because of what I have been through. I was a mom for 2 years at the age of 16 because there were 13-year-old girls who didn't understand what was going on and didn't understand how to manipulate the situation to get themselves out of there, that I had to teach how to do that and comfort. I was very well liked in program by all the girls, thank God, but I think I just have a welcoming personality. One of the things that really hurts my heart is another reason you could get put on red is for self-harm, which is so fucked up. Instead of having therapy for self-harm, girls would cut themselves and try to do it in places that they wouldn't be seen. If somebody reported them or a staff suspected it, they would get pulled out of class for a strip search. And there was a little chart that the staff would fill out of their bodies and mark where the self-harm was. And they would get a warning. A warning. You're in trouble. You need to stop this. They would strip search them again the next week, compare it to the diagram that they had. If there was any new damages, they were put in red in front of everybody and sent back into the classroom. So I remember one of my little sisters, and she was like 14. She struggled with self-harm and she was having a really rough week. And she walked into my bedroom with me and she was wearing a red shirt. And I was like, what happened? You know? And she rolled up her sleeves and it was just awful, like terrible.
Those things are all terrible, and I think that just continues to paint the picture of why this place was not helpful, to put it mildly. And I want to
Yes.
I guess I want to ask with that, we've already talked about how, all of these punishments were wild. The rules were
Mm-hmm.
really, really crazy. You wrote your parents about, them taking away tampons and your mom agreeing to send some. All of
Mm-hmm.
these things make it seem like the normal person would be like, okay, the kid writes their parents about all this terrible stuff. The parents think, oops, this is not a great situation. Let me
Mm-hmm.
get them out of here. You were writing your parents, you were saying really bad, things were really, really not great, but your
Yeah.
parents were not pulling you out. And you kind of learned afterwards why that was the case. And that is where we will leave it. That was Aliya Kasabian. I told you that we were going to end on what her parents were told, and that's exactly what we did. But you're going to have to wait until next week to hear exactly what made them think that they were helping Aliya. We've already heard so much about the Boise Girls Academy and just how much of a hindrance it was to the development of these young girls. So we've got to hear, what were they telling parents to keep girls there? What were they telling parents to keep that money rolling in? And I think that you'll find that just as shocking as everything else that you've heard this week. So next week we'll start with that. Then we're going to talk about leaving the school, leaving the academy, if we even want to continue calling it that, leaving the cult, and we're going to talk about just the impact that it's had on Aliya's life since then, the things she is doing now, which is some really amazing things. She's a tattoo artist now. We're going to touch a lot on that next week if that's of interest to you. But yeah, Aliya's an amazing person. I can't thank her enough for joining me this week. It was a really long episode. She was so gracious with her time. We're splitting it into 2 episodes. There was so much more that we could have covered, but I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll catch us next week for the rest of Aliya's story. So yeah, follow Aliya on all social media platforms. In the meantime, until we get to next week, go check out her amazing tattoo work. All the links to that will be in the show notes. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, like I said in the beginning, go follow along so you don't miss next week. You may be listening to this and be like, oh man, I really want to hear the rest of Aliya's story, and then you haven't subscribed on Apple and you haven't followed on Spotify, and then you forget, and it's 3 months later and you've got to listen to this one again because I can't remember the beginning of that story. So do yourself a favor, go follow, go subscribe on Apple or Spotify, so you won't miss next week's episode. Another really, really great one. Go follow us on Instagram, Not Enough Podcast. That is a great place to see past episodes as well. But we'll see you next week. Take it away, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time, where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or, hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.